All right, my friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Brian, and in today's video, we're going to do a deep dive and talk about the cost of living as a tourist here in Manila, Philippines. All right, I'm going to share with you my real numbers and show you how much I spent as a tourist here in my first 6 months in Manila, Philippines. Now, a few weeks ago, I made a video about the cost of living in BGC, sharing with you my real budget and real numbers, having already lived in the Philippines at that point, starting at that point for 1 full year. So you're going to see the cost differences here between the first 6 months when I first arrived, all the time I was eating out, I was going out partying, I was living in Airbnbs, and yes, I was spending a lot more money, which is very common for anyone moving to a new city. And at the end of this video, we will talk about the major differences in spending habits as Manila became my home and I went from being a tourist and eating out all that time and everything to more of a foreigner, a local foreigner living here in Manila. So the way I'm going to break down these numbers is to give you a sum total for each line item and money that I spent in each of those categories. Then we will divide that by 6 to get an average monthly cost for that time period. Okay, this is the only way I'm able to do this because I used a lot of cash during this time and I didn't keep a ton of receipts. Okay, I had to actually group some things together. So you'll see maybe a line item that says eating out and you'll say, oh, that's not a real number. It's a real number because you have to realize the amount of cash that I pulled from ATMs. I was also spending a lot of cash for meals, beer, entertainment, all that kind of stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the numbers. Okay, during my first 6 weeks, I stayed in Airbnbs in both Makati and Bonifacio Global City, BGC for short. Then I moved into a high-rise condo for the next 4 months, and I also took some trips, so all of this time adds up to those first 6 months. My average cost in Airbnbs was $44 per night, giving me a sum total of 108,543 pesos, which was a total of $1,892, okay? Once I moved into this fully furnished rental condo in BGC, my monthly rent went to 70,000 pesos per month, giving a sum total of 280,000 pesos for those 4 months. That's $4,880. Okay, utility bills, electric, water, internet, all that kind of combined together here, all added up for my condo rent for those 4 months was 26,963 pesos or 471 US dollars. Cell phone bill, I only had Smart at this time, so the sum total of that for the 6-month period in pesos was 2,495 pesos, so that wound up being 44 US dollars. All right, when I moved here, I rented a climate-controlled storage unit, which was absolutely fantastic. In fact, the staff there at Storage Mart are absolutely wonderful. And I will do a proper video on this. I'm going to break down all the storage options and everything that I found here, so videos coming out soon. But the sum total for this storage unit, again, this was over that 6-month period of time, was a total of 40,494 pesos, which winds up converting over to 706 US dollars, basically about $118 per month for climate-controlled storage here in the Philippines, right here next to BGC. Okay, next we need to talk about cash withdrawals from ATMs. Okay, I have no way of tracking purchases for cash. I didn't keep a stack of receipts, right? Now, I did use cash a lot for everything from eating out to entertainment, and yes, this included dating. Now, for those receipts I did have for eating out, for coffee and entertainment, I was able to categorize that here. I was able to put that into a line item, okay? But cash is going to be really the king here, right? So for cash that I withdrew out of the ATM over this time period for the 6 months was 208,408 pesos is what it comes out to be. So 3,634 US dollars is what I pulled in that 6-month period of time. Now, eating out receipts, I had totaled 55,789 pesos, which was 973 US dollars. And receipts that I had for entertainment, partying, drinking, going out to clubs and stuff, that came out to be 25,910 pesos, so 452 US dollars. Yet again, many of these categories I'm talking about here, that was all in that cash number. And yes, I did hit the club scene here, right? I did experience all that in my first 6 months. I dated, I went out, had a great time at the clubs and the pubs, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. All right, but next let's go ahead and talk about healthcare and health insurance as it relates to line items here. Okay, During this period of time, I was still using Safety Wing as my primary insurer, and this was a travel insurance company for my health insurance. This totaled out to be 39,930 pesos, so 696, so right at almost $700, so 696 US dollars for that conversion, okay? My out-of-pocket health care, so times when I got sick, when I had to go see a doctor and all that, that came out to be 35,701 pesos, so $624, okay? I also did the most in-depth, comprehensive medical physical I have ever had in my life. I went to St. Louis Medical Center and I did the over 50 golden physical package, but I wound up doubling the price as I went through there and I said, hey, go ahead and test everything. And we were adding all kinds of extra tests. In fact, I was going back and forth for about, I think it was about 2.5 days for all the different tests and setting them up. So that was in total 73,000 pesos, so 1,275 US dollars I spent because I wanted to get a full medical baseline, a complete workup on everything after I arrived here. So I now have that as a great baseline for my medical care. All right, next let's go ahead and talk about transportation. Now, I didn't have my motorbike at this time, so if I was jumping in taxis, motorbike taxis, Grabs, just ways to get around, I spent a total of 18,954 pesos. So that is, again, 331 US dollars when I do the conversion. My visa extensions during this piece of time ran me, 9,145 pesos. So that's 160 US dollars during that period of time. And my annual expenses, such as streaming services, digital mailbox, and all that, all the subscriptions I keep back in the US, I also threw that number in here too. So that wound up being for that period of time, what's that, 31,100 pesos, so about 510 US dollars, again, over the 6-month period. And that was like, again, renter's insurance and things like that. Now, I also did a 10-day Christmas holiday motorcycle trip out to Subic Bay and to Mopay Beach Resort in San Marcos, Zambales. I actually wound up renting a motorbike here, an ADV 150 motorbike here in Manila, and I rented it for 10 days. I wound up staying 7 nights because I had some packing nights and stuff like that in there. But I went out there for 7 nights, so between Subic Bay and Zambales in San Marcos. And this totaled, again, for drinks, food, gas, everything, the entire trip for 10 days with the motorbike rental was 17,283 pesos or 301 US dollars. For an entire vacation out to the beach. And I know somebody can say, oh my God, no way you can have that cheap. Hey, Long Island iced teas were 175 pesos each, and they were big. Okay, that's $3 a drink. So $12 for drinks, 4 Long Islands, I can become very entertaining. So seriously, once you get out of the city, things can get really inexpensive. So, all right. Let's go ahead and total all this up. If I total all of these expenses up over that 6-month period of time, what are we looking at? We're looking at 900,742 pesos or $15,674 US dollars with the exchange rate. Okay. Now, if I average this out over a 6-month period, we get an average monthly budget of 150,123 pesos, which winds up being 2,612 US dollars. So 2612, that's the most realistic numbers. Boots on the ground, my first 6 months here as a single guy, budget here in Manila, Philippines, getting to know the city and acting like a tourist, eating out all the time, eating at Western style restaurants, having coffee just about every single day. That's what you can expect when you get here, okay? And yes, you can spend more. Yes, you can spend less. It all comes down to your lifestyle, but I'm trying to share with you my real boots on the ground numbers. Now, one final section I want to discuss, and this is a section that I call home goods. Okay, when I left the United States, I sold everything, and I wound up only shipping a few boxes over here, a few Balikbayan boxes, okay? And there's these large boxes you can ship by sea. All right, so I shipped those over, and Southeast Asia is now my home base. The Philippines is my home base. So the fact that I did that, I needed to recreate my life here in the Philippines. Okay, so this included all the basics. Okay, we're talking bedding, pillows, blankets, small appliances like a coffee maker and my Instapot. Okay, dishes, silverware, home furnishings. In fact, this table, this desk, this computer monitor, all these things I purchased here locally. Okay, so some of these things add up, even my all-in-one printer. Okay, everything I purchased here locally is in this next category. So if we look at these categories, we're going to look at the following. Okay, I got 3 sections here. So my online shopping was with Lazada and Shopee, and I wound up spending 45,325 pesos, so it's about 790 US dollars. Okay, when I was shopping at Landers and S&R, which are the two big box stores here, I spent 45,732 pesos. That's when I went and looked at all the receipts, and that was $797. And then purchases at things like IKEA and home stores, furniture stores and stuff, I wound up spending 99,827 pesos, or that converts out to be 1,740 US dollars. So when I take all of these numbers now into account, okay, and I include all of these one-time purchases, so all basically the furniture stuff that I purchased, the computer monitor and all that kind of stuff, this brings that 6-month total, including all the one-time purchases, to 1,091,626 pesos, which is right at 19,000 or $19,001, okay? And then when I average this out, okay, this comes out to be 181,938 pesos, which is right at 3,167 US dollars. So those are raw numbers. That's what we're looking at here. And I wanted to include all of the one-time big purchases too, so you can see kind of what it may be like if you decide to move here yourself or you move somewhere abroad. Not only are you going to have your monthly expenses, but you're also going to have a lot of these one-time purchases you're probably going to experience. So I wanted to share with you my most accurate numbers. Now, as promised, let's go ahead and discuss what changed between these two monthly budgets, okay, from being a tourist and then coming into my current budget that I have that I talked about before. Okay, so I mentioned this in a previous video that my monthly budget, right, for my current setup here in BGC, okay, was 85,926 pesos on a month, so 1,485. And now when I add in my annual expenses, which I did in a follow-on video, which mostly was including my health insurance because I pay that annually, that bumped up my monthly budget here to 95,119 pesos, which was $1,653, right? So this added an extra $167, again, for like health insurance, renter's insurance, all that. That's kind of what that number is. So my monthly burn rate here is that 1,653 US dollars. Okay, that to me is what I'm spending on a daily basis, or a monthly basis, I should say, here in Manila, Philippines, here in BGC, in this condo right here that I went ahead and did on those prior videos. Okay, but just as we calculated now here, okay, looking at my first 6 months as a tourist, eating out all the time, all the one-time purchases and stuff like that, that is 150,123 pesos, which winds up being 2,612 US dollars. So between the two, between my two budgets, there's almost $1,000 difference. It's $959 difference exactly, but let's just call it 1,000. So what changed? What changed between those two budgets, my current budget as well as the budget I had when I first got here for those first 6 months? Well, the big item is basically rent. Okay, rent went from 70,000 pesos down to 35,000 pesos. So that right there is a savings of 600 US dollars. My rent went from a little over 1,200 US dollars to just over 600 here. Okay. Now, I also didn't have the storage unit anymore, okay, and that was costing me about 118 US dollars a month. So right there, I got another savings. So those two alone, if we say 600 and then the 718, or excuse me, the 118, we're at 718 savings right there. We're getting really close to that 1,000 savings. And I'm not eating out as much. Right? I'm not going out to clubs and everything, you know, that much right now. So that's another savings right there. But really the two big ones, right? And I can point this out, and you'll hear this from a lot of other people on the ground here, your two biggest costs are going to be your rent, and it's going to basically be eating out costs. Those are going to be the biggest drivers of cost here living abroad, at least I can speak to here in the Philippines. Those are the two big items that really is going to determine kind of your lifestyle that you're going to have and available funds. Okay, so there you have it, my friends. These are the most accurate numbers I can provide to you. I hope this really gives you a solid foundation of what the cost of living here is as a single guy here in BGC, and looking at it from both a tourist perspective and looking at it from a living locally as a foreigner perspective. All right, my friends, please like and subscribe. It really does help out this channel. And let's talk about this in the comments. If you have any questions or anything, toss them in there. Let's have a discussion. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.